What is up, everybody? Happy Tuesday afternoon to you all, and welcome to another edition of Set Point. This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez. It is great to be back here after Monday, where I had a lot of stuff to do. We have a big episode of Set Point going on. We have a lot to talk about, such as my Saturday at Long Beach State. We also have the CIF Southern Section Division 1 Finals that's going to be going on this Saturday. We also have a lot of key matchups in the NCAA this week, ranging from the Pac-12 to the Big West, and even to the Horizon League. We have a lot going on today. It's just going to be a great episode today. You are tuning in. Thank you so much for tuning in, because without you, this show wouldn't be anything. Without you, iSports Radio would be nothing without you. It wouldn't be the same without you. So once again, thank you all for tuning in to this show. And yeah. So once again, gotta give a huge shout out to everyone. Once again, gonna give a huge shout out to everyone that's listening. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is greatly appreciated. Because again, without you, this show wouldn't be anything. As you, the listeners out there, deserve quality content, and I definitely appreciate it. I'm sorry for not being here on Monday. I had some stuff going on around the house and in school, but I am back. I'm back. Gonna give you all a great episode of Set Point, and I also gotta give a shout out to my boy Larry B, who I was on the defining moment with. We kind of scratched some of the surface when it came to NCAA women's volleyball matchups, and yeah, it was great. But I told you all, I kind of teased you all that there was going to be a lot of milestone alerts. So let's get into some of these milestone alerts. Starting with Long Beach State, which is pretty much the school I'm going to. I'm going to save the applause button until after. So I'm going to start with Long Beach State, where Haley Harward became the fourth player in Long Beach State women's volleyball history to reach 1,500 kills. She's currently fourth all-time in digs, and she's not too far from the third all-time in digs. So big shout out to her right there. She's definitely doing it big at Long Beach State. Now let's head over to the Pac-12, where Juliet Patterson is the first player in a Power 5 conference to record a triple-double, as she had a triple-double with 46 assists, 13 digs, and 10 assists. I believe she had that on Sunday in Arizona's matchup, Pac-12 matchup. So definitely got to give a huge shout out to her. She definitely is one of the better players in the NCAA, probably one of the more overlooked players since she's not on like a team like Stanford or UCLA or Washington. But Arizona Wildcats, bear down, gotta give them a shout out. And Julia Patterson is also a Southern California product coming from Los Alamitos. Yeah, she's a darn good setter. So next up is Polina Shemanova, who had 36 kills, which is a school record for Syracuse, as Syracuse managed to pull off the win over Louisville. That's a huge win for the Orange right there. Once again, Polina Shemanova had 36 kills, which is a school record, so definitely got to give her a shout-out. Next shout-out is Margot Thompson of Youngstown State Volleyball, who became the 17th player to record 1,000 digs. So yeah, definitely got to give her a shout-out. Digs are kind of overlooked since they're not basically the thing that's scoring the points. But yeah, 1,000 digs is definitely a huge deal. So definitely got to give her a shout-out. Then we're going to jump over to Villanova, where setter Emma Decker became Villanova's all-time assist leader, which is really awesome. Which is really, really good. I believe she accomplished that yesterday. So that's definitely a big, big time shout out. And you're the all-time assist leader. you're setting the bar high for up and coming setters that come to Villanova. So definitely gotta give her a shout. Now this one was the biggest one ever. On Sunday, Jordan Thompson of Cincinnati became the first Division I player since 1999 to record 50 kills in a single match, as she led Cincinnati to a 5-set victory over UConn. And in addition to that, she hit a .530 hitting percentage. Like Larry one time said on Defining Moment, those are Madden numbers. That right there is Madden numbers. I know in a 5-set match you'll be packing up kill after kill after kill, but 50 kills with hitting that high of a hitting percentage, that's just friggin' amazing. That's so awesome. So huge shout to Jordan Thompson. That is absolutely amazing. Just absolutely amazing right there. And if there are any other milestone, and I'm pretty sure there are plenty other milestones that I need to go through. Oh yes, there's plenty more where that came from. Kristen Largay recorded her 8th dig for American volleyball, American University, and she is the all-time dig leader at American University in terms of women's volleyball. She has 1,866 plus digs in her 4-year career as an Eagle. So that she is now the all-time dig leader, and that is absolutely amazing. And also the all-time kill leader in Murray State women's volleyball is Rachel Guistino, who is now the all-time kill leader at Murray State women's volleyball with about 1,599 kills and counting, and that's absolutely amazing, really amazing right there. So it's definitely huge right there, and I believe that's all. And that's pretty much all I've got, except Texas A&M beat Kentucky as they upset number 15 last week in 4 sets. So definitely got to give a shout out to Texas A&M. And that's not really a milestone alert, but that's still definitely shout out worthy. Big shout out to H-Town Blake Henley, who is a huge Texas A&M fan. Got to show him some love as well. And I believe that's all the milestone alerts I have. So let's now hit the applause button. If there are any other milestone alerts that you need to inform me of, please do let me know. That's pretty much what I got for the majority. But yeah, those are some great milestones. It's just absolutely amazing. When you cross that milestone, it's just a huge weight off your shoulders, and it's just an amazing feeling. Because now, especially if you're on the top, because now you're setting the bar. Like I said, you're setting the bar for younger generations to come, and for players that want to come to like a certain school that will definitely be worthy enough to possibly break that record or possibly meet that record. So that's definitely amazing right there. So definitely I gotta give another shout. Gotta hit the applause button once again to all of the milestone breakers right there. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, now it's time to talk about my night at Long Beach State. Yes, it's time for another edition of Story Time with Teran. So basically, Long Beach State, once again, I covered another women's volleyball game at Long Beach State where the Beach, which is what they're called now. They're not going to be known as the Sharks or the 49ers. They are now known as the Beach. They played UC Davis on Saturday in probably one of the more thrilling matchups, one of the more thrilling and eye-opening matchups. So the first set, UC Davis was up for the most part, and then Long Beach State was trying to claw its way back, but Davis managed to put the set away with a kill. So there was that So there's that. Then the next two sets, something clicked for Long Beach. They started playing really well. Their energy was just all over the place, and they took those next two. They hardly trailed in those two sets. I think in the second set they only trailed once, and then in the third set they never trailed. And suddenly Long Beach State is up 2-1. So now for set 4, Davis starts to take charge. They were up it was close for the first half of that set. It was 12-12, and then Davis starts to gun it and goes up 21-15 at one point. Then suddenly Long Beach State rips off 6 straight points, and suddenly it's 21-21. But back and forth it went. Davis got a point, then Long Beach got a point, Davis got a point, Long Beach got a point. Then Davis had set point at 24-23. I even recorded this live for those of you that didn't tune in on Twitter. So I believe it was Lana Radovich who recorded the service ace. A middle blocker who served for set point got an ace. And she's a freshman, by the way. So that was an amazing moment for Lana Radkovich of UC Davis, to come up with a big ace. That's a gutsy and ballsy play on Dan Connors' part to just go with the freshman to serve for set point. And to believe it or not, that's just she got it. If you're a coach, you're definitely praising her. So the fifth set. Now on to the fifth set. Davis and Long Beach. It was back and forth. This reminded me of the Northridge Long Beach match from a couple weeks ago, and it was basically just back and forth. Davis held a slim 8-7 lead at the side change and the media timeout. By the way, this game was also on ESPN3, and which was also cool. I think that's the third time Long Beach State's women's volleyball team has been featured on ESPN3. So that's pretty cool. The Beach is definitely doing it big when it comes to women's volleyball. They may not have the best record, but they're certainly one of the more entertaining women's volleyball teams out there. So eventually, 8-7 Davis. Davis starts to pull away as they eventually led not 11-9, forcing Long Beach to take its last time. I think it was its first time out of the set 5. And then Davis eventually went up 14-10 off of a hitting error from Long Beach State. I don't recall. And it was basically the final timeout for Long Beach State. And eventually, it's match point for Davis. But Long Beach State just could not go down. They basically scored the next 3 points, and it was 14-13, and then now Davis has to burn all of its timeouts. So 14-13, and it looked like it was going to be 14-14 as one of Davis's players got a kill, and it looked like it was hit out, and even the line judge signaled that it was going to be out. It was out, but then the top ref, the head referee that stands at the top of the net, ruled a touch call, and unfortunately, and that's a huge unfortunately, that was a point for Davis, and that was basically the match. And Long Beach's coaches, Long Beach's fans were protesting the call. That's just a tough way to lose, though, losing off of a referee call. I did talk with Joy Mackenzie Feuerbringer after the game. And she did say that there are challenges in Big West Conference play, but unfortunately, their cameras they didn't set up their cameras, unfortunately, which kind of stinks. But they didn't know they were going to need them at that point. And that's Joy Mackenzie Furbringer said that's the toughest way to lose. They're probably looking back on that film, and if they see that there was no touch, they're probably going to be just flabbergasted. So that's definitely a tough loss, but a great match nonetheless. I hate how a match has to end that way off of a judgment call, but refs are human. Everyone is human. Maybe Long Beach should have set up their cameras and possibly had a better challenge, had used the challenge. So, but other than that, It was a great match. It was a great, entertaining match. Long Beach is definitely prone to 5-set matches because they've gone 5 sets a lot. They went 5 with I believe it was Florida International. They went 5 with University of Florida. They went 5 with Texas State. They went 5 with Northridge. They went 5 with Davis. They've been going 5 quite a bit. But more times than not, they've been on the wrong side of the score. But again, nonetheless, Long Beach has a young team, and everyone's starting to get into trying to find their position and find their roles on that team. One player who did stood out, who has definitely been standing out, is Kashana Williams of Long Beach State, who had 22 kills, and she just continues to have a dynamic game after game after game. And even commentators have been just having their jaw dropped in regards to her kills, because she jumps really high. If you go to a Long Beach State game and you see number 22 Kashana Williams getting a kill, she could jump really high, and sometimes she'll have off-speed kills, which catches the other team off guard, or roll shots, which is basically like not like fast kills, but just like kills that are like light and that are unexpected for most teams, where they're pretty much going to have to dive on the ground and hope that they keep the ball alive. So if you're in the Long Beach area and there's a Long Beach State women's volleyball game going on, definitely do catch Kashana Williams in Long Beach. Definitely catch Kashana Williams' kills. Just note that you have to have a clear bag because there's a clear bag policy. But nonetheless, Long Beach State is definitely one of the more watchable teams when it comes to the Big West. And even Brian Gimilaro was at the game. Gimilaro, however it's pronounced. Yeah, he was at the game doing co-commentary for ESPN3. That was pretty cool. I got to meet him, and he is a living legend. He is definitely one of the more noteworthy women's volleyball coaches at Long Beach State. It was tough that when he resigned, but, nonetheless, he's just a legend. He's had multiple Big West championships won, and also a bunch of appearances into the NCAA tournament. A lot of noteworthy appearances. So hopefully Joy Mackenzie Furbringer imitates that success one day. But now to close the book on that matchup, Long Beach has 2 matchups this week. They are at Cal State Fullerton on Friday, and then they're at UC Irvine on Saturday. They beat Fullerton Fullerton beat Long Beach the first time, and then Long Beach beat Irvine the first time. So they're definitely going to want to put aside their loss to Davis and just move forward to Fullerton, because they don't want to get swept by one of their rivals, being Fullerton, and they also don't want to lose the black and blue rivalry matchup to UC Irvine. You just don't want that. You don't want to get shown up by a rival. And last week, they had 3 matchups. They played well against. They obviously played well against Santa Barbara, and I knew they were going to have somewhat of a trap game against the Gauchos, considering the Gauchos played Hawaii like a few days after, like 3 days after. So yeah, I knew Santa Barbara was going to struggle with Long Beach, and Long Beach almost took 2 sets off of them. But that third set was what swung all the momentum to Santa Barbara, because after Santa Barbara took that crazy wild third set, 31-29, Long Beach just couldn't recover. Santa Barbara was just all over them like flies on cowpucky. So yeah. But I could see Long Beach at least getting one, maybe both wins this week. But the big matchup of the week in terms of the Big West Conference is definitely Cal Poly, or UCSB at Cal Poly. Like I said on the defining moment, Yeah, that match will be played on Saturday. Or no, not Saturday. It will be. It is a Saturday matchup. I said on the defining moment that was going to be a Friday matchup, but it's a Saturday matchup. Santa Barbara at Cal Poly. That's a huge matchup for both those teams. Both of those teams actually lost last week to Hawaii. I said that Santa Barbara and Cal Poly both had a rough one on the Big Island, and sure enough, they did. Santa Barbara lost to Hawaii in 5 sets, with the 5th set being 16-14, and then Cal Poly lost in 4 on Sunday to Hawaii in 4 sets, which means now there's a 3-way tie for first place being with Santa Barbara, Cal Poly, and Hawaii. So that's definitely huge right there. That was definitely a heartbreaker for Santa Barbara, because I predicted Santa Barbara was going to win that one in 5. So, and to lose that one in 5 with going to a deuce game, that's tough. That's a tough pill to swallow. And then, I wasn't surprised when Hawaii beat Cal Poly in 4. I don't mean to be the I called it guy, but I kind of called it last week when I said that Hawaii was going to beat Cal Poly in 4. Whether they beat Santa Barbara or whether Santa Barbara beat them, I knew Hawaii was going to just move on from that Friday win or loss and move on to Sunday's game, because Hawaii's one of Hawaii's losses did not come from Santa Barbara. It came from UC Davis, or not UC Davis, UC Irvine, which they were able to get revenge on the second time around. So Hawaii definitely is still Hawaii in general controls its own destiny when it comes to the Big West Conference. That said, however, Hawaii has a big matchup. Well, they have two matchups this week. First off, their biggest matchup of the year is Friday at UC Davis. They had to go 5 with Davis the first time, so I'll be very interested to see how Hawaii does with Davis. If Hawaii gets past Davis, they pretty much are in the clear for the most part. Because on Sunday they play UC Riverside. I'm pretty sure that's the bottom of the Big West Conference. Then the final week of the season. Actually, no, there's a bye week. After this week, there is a bye week in terms of Big West Conference volleyball. So you all won't be hearing me talk about the Big West Conference, which if some of you like, that's cool. But if some of you don't like it, if you don't like me talking about my stories at Long Beach State, then oh well. But if you do, then good on you. I'll give you a shout out and a cookie, an imaginary cookie. But yeah, as for UC Davis, Hawaii at UC Davis, I'm going to pick Hawaii to win this one in 4. I think Hawaii gets the job done. They're playing really good volleyball as of late, and they did have some injuries going into some of these earlier Big West Conference games, but Hawaii is definitely getting healthier as time progresses. And I just think they're going to be so much readier. They're going to be more prepared for UC Davis. It's going to be a road game, but this week will mark their last 2-game road trip. After that, they're pretty much at Stan Sheriff Center for the last 2 games, being against Northridge and Long Beach State. But Hawaii, that's pretty much their last tough matchup, unless they get a trap game from like Long Beach State or Cal State Northridge. So yeah, Hawaii in 4 over UC Davis. It's also going to be a Thursday night matchup between UC Davis and Cal State Fullerton. I believe that's going to be on Thursday. I believe that's a Thursday matchup. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, Larry and I were pretty much talking about it on the defining moment, and I'm kind of blanking out. So as I am going on the UC Davis women's volleyball schedule, that's actually tonight. Fullerton and Davis play tonight. Those are two improved teams. Davis may not have the Big West Conference that most of these other teams have, but I will say that their overall record has generally improved. They're 13-11. six of those conference losses kind of were to kind of add to their overall losses, but Davis is still having a solid year. Some of those losses were kind of tough, where they lost to Hawaii, they lost to Hawaii once, they lost to UCSB twice, they lost to Cal Poly twice. They even had to go 5 with Cal Poly, and then they lost to CSUN prior to that Long Beach State women's volleyball win. So tonight against Cal State Fullerton, I'm going to say Davis in 5. I'm going to pick UC Davis to win in 5 over the Titans. Why? Because Davis is such a good home team. If you look at their home record, they're 8-2. Their only 2 home losses came against Cal Poly and Santa Barbara, and they even had to go 5 with Cal Poly, like I said. But I'm picking Davis in 5 tonight. I think this one goes 5 sets. And I think Davis is just going to sneak out of the pavilion with a win. I mean, they're definitely coming off of an emotional 5-set win over Long Beach State, but I think they're more than capable of winning at home, because they're definitely adapting well at home, and they're definitely proving themselves as a really good home team. So I think Davis in 5 tonight, But Fullerton is also a really improved team. Julia Crawford, like I said, is a beast. Coming out of the Long Beach area, she definitely has proven herself worthy as being one of the top Big West Conference players in the Big West. And she could be a nominee for Freshman of the Year, but we'll see how it goes for them. But for today's matchup between Davis and Cal State Fullerton, I am taking Davis to win in 5. It's going to be a really great matchup. Hopefully it won't have the same ending as Long Beach State UC Davis, but you never know. Now for Saturday's matchup between UCSB at Cal Poly. This one's going to be a very interesting matchup. Cal Poly, lost to Santa Barbara in four the first time around. And both those teams lost to Hawaii. Whoever loses that matchup is pretty much going to have their conference title hopes dashed, as it's going to be tough for one of those teams to recover, unless Hawaii and the winner of Cal Poly Santa Barbara just slip up in the final week. It is possible, but you never know what could happen. I'm going to take Cal Poly to win that one in 5. I think Cal Poly wins that one in 5 just because they're such a really good home team. They have not lost a home game in 29 tries. So I just think that Cal Poly is just going to be much better. It's just going to be the better team. I don't want to take anything away from Santa Barbara, but I definitely think Cal Poly will be ready this time around, especially when playing at home. It's tough to win at Cal Poly, so I'm taking Cal Poly to win in 5. I don't like picking against Santa Barbara, but I definitely got to go with Cal Poly on this one. They're just the better home team. And I think Cal Poly is starting to come on at the right time. Sure, they had a 4-set loss to Hawaii, but Cal Poly has been consistent. Santa Barbara hasn't necessarily been the most consistent, especially when they lost a set to Long Beach State, and they struggle with Long Beach State. But I will say that Santa Barbara is definitely going to give Cal Poly a battle, and Cal Poly needs to be careful, because the Rudden sisters and Tallulah Froley are definitely a combination worth noting. And Cal Poly is going to be busy when it comes to trying to slow down Lindsey Ruddens. Speaking of Lindsey Ruddens, it is her birthday today, so definitely gotta give a shout out to Lindsey Ruddens. If you're somehow listening to this, Lindsey, which you probably aren't, but oh well, happy birthday from here at Set Point and to all of the IE Sports Radio family. Happy birthday, Lindsey. So yes, now that we're done with the Big West Conference, we're gonna transition into the Pac-12. So as much as I don't like talking about West Coast all the time, the Pac-12 is definitely a Power 5 conference. With Julia Patterson getting her first triple-double, and not only her first triple-double, the first triple-double coming from a Power 5 conference. And those are definitely Madden numbers. That 46, 13, and 10, those are Madden numbers, which is downright amazing. So big ups to Julia Patterson. Also big ups to UCLA. UCLA continues to have their amazing season. Last Tuesday, their coach, Mike Seeley, was featured on 570 AM Sports Radio. And last week, Mac May was named the National Player of the Week, which is definitely huge for her. She's definitely one of the more talented players, and she's definitely got a bright future ahead of her when it comes to either beach volleyball or indoor volleyball. Matter of fact, I could see her playing for the national team. She's just a powerhouse. She's a literal powerhouse. We gotta hit the applause button for her. Gonna give her a little bit of applause just because I'm a USC guy and so is Larry. But honestly, that's definitely huge on her part. Mac May is just a beast, honestly. You can't say enough good about her. I mean, if you've seen Mac May play like I have, you just can make a book about how great she plays and how flat out amazing she is, and how she's definitely improved UCLA quite a bit. Because like I said, UCLA missed the NCAA tournament last year, which was definitely tough, especially for a promising program like UCLA and for someone like Mike Seeley. But it's great to see UCLA back on track. As for the entire Pac-12, Stanford's still in first place at 10-2. They're pretty much back on track. They did not have once again, they didn't have Catherine Plummer, and they also didn't have Kendall Kipp, who I believe is out in injury. But they were able to get by without her. Last week, when Stanford played at Oregon State at the Maples Pavilion, they actually did have another freshman step up, being Natalie Birdie, and she had 8 kills, and she had a hitting percentage of .875. I know it's only 8 kills, and she didn't have any errors, but that's definitely a huge and great debut for Birdie right there. I actually have the honor of seeing Natalie Birdie play back in her days at Mater Dei, and I definitely know the Birdie family well. They're definitely great people, and Natalie is definitely a down-to-earth person, and she definitely loves Christmas as well. Unfortunately, Christmas is not for another month or so. Unfortunately, that's the case right there, But Natalie Birdie I'm gonna make the bold prediction right here. She's definitely gonna be one of the better players on Stanford. Stanford's depth is definitely quite amazing with Catherine Plummer, Megan McClure, Kendall Kipp, Caitlin Keefe, Madeline Gates, who is a graduated senior, Audrina Fitzmaurice. And the list goes on and on. Stanford, knowing Stanford's luck, they're probably getting more. Their freshman class is probably going to be better and better, even more better next week, not next week, next year when they bring in a lot of freshmen, and everyone's gonna say, "Oh, Stanford lost Jenna Gray, Stanford lost Morgan Hens, Stanford lost Megan McClure." Well, they're going to reload. And they're going to get even better. Stanford is not going anywhere. They're still going to be one of the more dominant teams in the Pac-12 and in the NCAA. So definitely got to give Stanford a shout-out. I'll hold off on the applause button. As for the rest of the Pac-12, it is such a tight race for second place. You have Cal, Washington State, Washington, Utah, and UCLA tied for second in the Pac-12. That's a 5-way tie for second place, which is absolutely friggin' amazing. And right behind those 5 teams is USC at 7-5 in the Pac-12. USC, I'll talk a little about USC, just because they're one of my teams when it comes to NCAA women's volleyball. USC had a big win over Washington last week, and they swept the season series against Washington as well, which was huge. I think USC was down 2-1 in the match, and then they grinded out a tough 4th set, and then the 5th set they managed to get it going, and, as one of Washington's assistant coaches once told me, USC serves the ball really tough, and if you're not ready for that ball, you're basically giving a point to USC. And it's tough to win at the Alaska Airlines Arena, which is really tough, which, it's just a big win for USC. USC's, and especially in a 5-set match, USC's been on the wrong side of 5-set matches this year, having gotten reverse swept by Stanford, having gotten reverse swept by Utah, having not pulled out the reverse sweep against Washington State, having gotten beaten at UCLA, and having gotten beaten against San Diego of all teams. So USC is definitely one of those teams that's up there. The problem is that can they make it into the NCAA tournament? I think they can, but and especially when the Pac-12 is a Power 5 conference, they're going to have a lot of teams going into the NCAA tournament. Heck, even Arizona State, who's 5-7 in conference, can make the big dance. But you're talking about taking 8 teams into a 64-team bracket. So that's definitely going to be huge right there. That's basically if they take those. If the Pac-12, if the NCAA takes those 8 Pac-12 teams in the NCAA tournament, that's basically 1/8 of the bracket right there, which is crazy. And if you're a fan of like a non-Power 5 school, like say the Big West or the Ivy League or any of those other not so big conferences, you have to be outraged. I don't think it's ideal for Power 5 conferences to have like higher priority over some of these other leagues and conferences, but it's just that some of these teams are just friggin' good. Like, it's tough for some of these teams. Like the Big West will have at the most 2 teams in the NCAA tournament. Maybe it's just 1 team considering there's just not enough teams. If everyone had a 500 record, if the NCAA tournament took every team that had a 500 record, then the 64 team bracket would just be way more than 64 teams. That's why there's like the runner-up when it comes not the runner-up, the not so big tournament. It's like the NAIA or not NAIA. It's just like a 65th place tournament for like some of these teams, or it's just a not so big tournament where all these other teams that missed the cut basically just go into this tournament where I think it's like 32 teams, maybe it's like 64 teams, and then it's basically just they face off against one another, and it's just not as exciting it's just not the same as the NCAA tournament, but who knows? So back to the Pac-12, there are a lot of key matchups this week. One being UCLA against Utah. That matchup will be on Saturday, or no, it will be on Sunday. Utah has its own big matchup prior to the UCLA, where they have to play at USC. So it's definitely going to be a tough matchup for Utah. I can definitely see USC winning that one because Kyla Lanier and Brooke Botkin are definitely flat out amazing. And USC has taken its lumps, and they definitely want to get it together, and they want to be in that mix to make the NCAA tournament. Because if for some reason the NCAA doesn't take all those teams, that have a 500 record, they could be left on the outside looking in, because it's tough to take 8 teams and put them in a 64 team pool, because that doesn't seem fair to like the other conferences. Well, at least the non-Power 5 conferences anyway. But that's why there kind of also needs to be like more conference tournaments. It's tough for the Pac-12, considering if you were to have like 8 teams in the Pac-12 tournament, what would happen with Oregon State, Oregon, Arizona, and Colorado? I mean, they could do the same thing for like men's and women's basketball. Just have the first 4 teams get a bye, and then the next 8 teams just duke it out against one another, and then have the top 4 seeds duke it out on like a neutral site, kind of like how they did with the CIF Southern Section girls volleyball playoffs in Division 1, where they just took 12 teams and then they gave the first 4 seeds a first round bye. So that's an idea, but other than that, USC, I could still see them making the NCAA tournament. It's too early to talk about the tournament, but honestly, USC is definitely a team that's worth putting in the tournament. They've had some decent wins. They've had some tough losses. Beating Washington twice in one season is definitely noteworthy. Beating Cal is definitely noteworthy. And taking a set off of Texas is also really good, and taking a set off of Creighton is good. So there's pretty much that for USC. I think they messed up on one of USC's wins and losses. They have Long Beach State beating USC, which that would be wishful thinking for Long Beach State fans, but USC beat Long Beach State. So Pac-12, you might want to fix their final score matchup against Long Beach State. So, as for Utah UCLA, that's definitely going to be a great matchup. I'm going to take UCLA to win that 1 in 4. UCLA is just on a roll. They're definitely a better team than last year. I think they just have it all figured out. Last year they were very senior light. They're having only 2 seniors. This year they have quite a bit of seniors, being led by Mac May and Savvy Simo. Oh, actually, no, I think Savvy Simo is a junior. But either way, they have a lot of good leadership, especially running a 6-2 offense. It's not really easy. You're trying to get like 2 setters in and keep him rotated. But I just think UCLA is just so much more improved than last year. Their overall record doesn't show it, but overall, UCLA is just a complete team this year. They're just so much better than last year. Like, you can't really find the difference. Doesn't look like there's too many other noteworthy matchups other than Utah, USC. I'm going to say USC wins that 1 in 5. I think USC wins that 1 in 5. I'm not trying to say it just to be a USC homer, but I think USC, they saw their tough loss with Washington State. They definitely got to clean up some things when it comes to their team. But overall, I think SC is going to get the job done. I think they're going to start to do better in 5-set matches, or matches that go to a 5th set. But overall, they should definitely try to prevent a 5th set from happening, because you don't want to run the risk of having like a bad call just not go your way. So we'll see what happens when it comes to USC and Utah. I once again, I'm picking USC to beat Utah in 5. They just have so many good options like Brooke Botkin, Kyla Lanier, Jasmine Gross, Raquel Lazaro has been great at setter. The list goes on and on and on. So yeah, we'll see when it comes to those Pac-12 matchups. Another good matchup is Washington at Oregon. And that's despite Oregon not having the best record, and despite this being one of their big down years, I think Oregon can give Washington some trouble. I think Washington wins that 1 in 4. I think Oregon takes a set off them and makes it competitive, and especially when you're playing at Matthew Knight Arena and it's kind of a rivalry game. But I think that That's going to be a great matchup between those two teams. Oregon, like I said, they're having one of their down years. They did have a lot of roster turnover compared to last year, but I think Washington's going to get the job done. But Oregon, watch out for those Ducks. Oregon actually pulled off a big win last week. They beat Cal at Cal, which was huge. For having one of their down years, Oregon proved to Cal that they still have some fight within them. That just goes to show you that you just can't. The Pac-12, anyone can beat anyone on a nightly basis. It's like the NFL. So yeah. That's pretty much all I got on the Pac-12. Stanford is traveling to Arizona to face the Arizona schools, as well as Cal. So we'll see what happens then. Washington State is at Oregon State. They've basically got the same the Oregon schools as well as Washington. So yeah, I'm looking forward to some of those matches. So now let's transition into the Big Ten, where the Big Ten had some big time matchup last week, being Nebraska and Penn State. And wouldn't you know it, Nebraska came out with the win. They defended their home turf and they beat Penn State in 5 at Nebraska. So we gotta hit the applause button for them right there. So yeah, it's definitely a big win for Nebraska. It definitely keeps them in check. It definitely keeps them in pace for the Big West, or not the Big West, the Big Ten conference title. As we see in the standings, Wisconsin still leads that conference with a perfect 12-0 record and an overall record of 16-4. Minnesota's 11-1. Nebraska's 10-2. Penn State's 10-2. Michigan's right behind them with an 8-4 record. Purdue is 7-5. Illinois is 6-6. Ohio State is 5-7. Michigan State is 4-8. Maryland's 4-8. Iowa is 3-9. Rutgers is 2-10. Indiana is 1-11, and Northwestern is 1-11. So as for Purdue, Purdue has been like a little bit under the radar, and like I said, they took down Nebraska for the first time in like quite some time, and they played Penn State this week. I believe that match is going to be on a Wednesday, I believe. So, and it's definitely going to be a big time matchup, and for Penn State, Kendall, it's going to be tough to beat Penn State on the road. For Purdue, it's going to be tough to beat Penn State on the road because Penn State has some passionate volleyball fans, and Penn State doesn't necessarily lose at home that easily. The only time Penn State lost at home quite easily was to Pitt, and Pitt is the number 2 ranked team in the nation in the AVCA polls behind Texas. So it just goes to show you that you don't beat Penn State that easily. You just don't. You just don't, man. So as for Penn State, they obviously had a rough one against Nebraska last week. Before they face Purdue, they have to face Indiana, and that Indiana game is a trap game right there. That Indiana game could be a trap game because despite having only one conference win, Indiana is freaking good, man. Indiana is really good. One of their players is Courtney Bazario, who pretty much can do it all. She's like 6'4", 6'5" on a good day, and she can play setter, she can play middle, she can play right side, she can play outside. She's just an overall really good player, and she's definitely made Indiana really good. Because take away that 1-11 Big Ten conference record, Indiana has an overall record of 11-2, which is definitely impressive. They even have an upset win over Missouri, which is definitely big right there. Once again, And that right there could be a trap game for Penn State. Penn State cannot look ahead to Purdue, because Purdue is also definitely improved as well, and they have some really good players like Claire Archibald, to name one. You just don't want to underestimate Purdue. You just can't. That said, I can see Penn State winning both matchups. Why? Because they have a really talented libero in Kendall White. She is fourth. She may be fourth in the Big Ten with in digs per set with 4.03, but she's also 140 digs away from breaking the Penn State women's volleyball program record. So she's pretty much on her way to being the all-time dig leader at Penn State. And that's definitely huge for her. It just goes to show you that liberos are important people as well. And libero is definitely one of the toughest positions to play in volleyball. Second toughest, in my opinion, behind setter. You kind of have to have a screw loose when playing that, and you definitely have to have a knack of not getting kills. Otherwise, you risk it being like a violation, a hitting violation, or back row attacker violation, or something like that. But that's definitely huge for Kendall White. For her to be on her way to breaking the all-time dig record at Penn State. So that's definitely huge for her, and I believe she's going places. I definitely can see her playing on the U.S. national team as well. Who knows? Or she could play overseas. The sky's the limit with her and these other players from Penn State. Look at Megan Courtney and look at Micah Hancock, who both won NCAA championships for Russ Rose and the Nittany Lions. So those are some quick facts right there for Penn State. But as for Penn State in general, I definitely can see them winning both those matchups. It'll be tough, though. I don't think they'll sweep both of their matchups. They'd have to play really good, and even so, Indiana is probably their biggest trap game, and Purdue is not to be taken lightly. So it's definitely going to be a tough week for the Nittany Lions, but I see them getting the job done at home, because like I said, Penn State does not lose that easily at home. They just don't lose that easily. You gotta play really well against them, because they have some good hitters like Jamari Parker, and that's just to name a few. So we'll see how it goes, though, but, I see Penn State going 2-0 this week. As for the Big Ten Conference leader, Wisconsin, they face Ohio State, and they're at Ohio State, and they're at Maryland. I can see them winning both those matchups. They just can't underestimate Ohio State. I think Ohio State is just one of those teams that their record doesn't define them. And I just think that Ohio State is gonna lick their lips and thinking, we're facing Wisconsin. That's a pretty good record you have there. It'd be quite the shame if someone handed you your first L. So we'll see how it goes, though, in regards to that. So I still think Wisconsin wins that 1-4, and I think they sweep Maryland. They just can't look ahead to next week. Don't look ahead to next week, Wisconsin. Next week they are at number 6 Minnesota in probably their biggest game of the year. But just don't look ahead to Wisconsin, please. And their schedule gets tougher from here on out after this week. But again, just don't look ahead to next week, Wisconsin. That you have such a talented team. Looking ahead would be the last thing to do. You would want. So to close on the Big Ten Conference, Wisconsin is in a great position. They just can't get ahead of themselves. So there's that. And I can see Nebraska making one last push. But who's to say? Nebraska is still young this year. They have 0 seniors on their team, and without too many seniors, they're basically in a little bit of a rebuild mode, and they're going to have other players step up. So, transitioning from the Big Ten, we are going to talk about a league that I don't really talk about that much, and that would be the Horizon League, where last week, Wright State took down Milwaukee in straight sets. They swept them. Break out the brooms, because Wright State basically sent Milwaukee to the left. But jokes aside, Wright State swept Milwaukee. That's a huge win for them. That puts Wright State in a good position to possibly win the Horizon League, but there's still a little ways to go. But still, impressive win by Wright State. So as for this week's big Horizon League matchup, that will be Oakland against Milwaukee. Oakland is in 5th place in that league, but they're still impressed. They are one of the few schools to take down Milwaukee, who is 23-3 overall. Milwaukee has only 3 losses, like I said. One of those losses came against Wright State last week, and then I'm sorry. Wright State didn't beat Milwaukee last week. Milwaukee beat Wright State. So I guess that pun was pretty much wrong. So I guess you could say I was wrong state about Wright State. But for Wright State to have a win over Milwaukee is pretty impressive. And then, like I said, this matchup between Oakland and Milwaukee is going to be really big for Milwaukee, because they only have a 1-game lead when it comes to the Horizon League. So it's definitely going to be tough for Milwaukee to hold on, because as league play starts to come to a close, it's definitely going to be tough to hold on to that top spot. And with how competitive this league is, that even Oakland can beat a team like Milwaukee. Anything can happen. And you also have to watch out for Wright State, who is on a 4-game win streak, who has beaten teams such as Northern Kentucky, IUPUI, and they even, like I said, they beat Milwaukee and they beat Green Bay. Wait, what? Hello? Yeah. No, well, I guess this whole schedule thing is kind of messed up, because they're saying Wright State lost, and now they're saying Wright State won. So, just to clarify, last week, Wright State beat Milwaukee. Wright State sent Milwaukee to the left, and is pretty much in a good position to possibly win the Horizon League. So, I can see Milwaukee winning there. So, as for Milwaukee and Oakland, just to stop my rambling, that's going to be played on Friday. That will be at Milwaukee. I see Milwaukee beating Oakland in 3. I don't mean to say that in a negative way to Oakland, but I just think that Milwaukee is going to get its revenge, and they're not going to take Oakland lightly, and I think that winning streak being snapped by Oakland is just fueled their fire, and I think it's going to be. And, maybe that first matchup was kind of like how the Chargers played against the Packers, or and vice versa, where the Packers was just overmatched, and it was just a big piece of humble pie. So overall, I think it's just going to be a sweep by Milwaukee. I think one of the sets will go to at least one deuce game. We'll go past 23. We'll go past 25. But I just think that Milwaukee is going to win. Was going to win quite easily because they need all the wins they can get because it gets easier for the most part until they face Green Bay in their final game of the week next week. Or I'm sorry, not final game of the week next week. Final game of the week next week on Saturday. So, and Green Bay is very much in the hunt for the Horizon League Championship. So, as for who Green Bay plays, they play Cleveland State, UIC, Youngstown State, and they play Oakland. I guess Oakland plays Green Bay. Hopefully. So I guess I was wrong about that Milwaukee Oakland matchup happening. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, in regards to Green Bay and Oakland, hopefully that Green Bay Oakland matchup isn't like the Green Bay Packers and the Oakland Raiders. Sorry, Larry, I had to. But overall, Milwaukee needs as many wins as possible. They face Oakland tonight. They face not tonight. They face Oakland Saturday. They face Northern Kentucky on Sunday. And then next week they have UIC in Green Bay. That Green Bay matchup is going to be a tough one, but they can't look that far ahead. They just can't. And I feel that this week is a bit of a trap week for this week is probably a trap week for Milwaukee because next week UIC and Green Bay is basically a bigger jump against Oakland and Northern Kentucky. So overall, I can see Milwaukee winning, but they just can't underestimate any of their opponents. I mean, I definitely see them sweeping Oakland tonight. As for Northern Kentucky, I can see them sweeping them as well, but who's to say? As for Wright State, looking at Wright State's schedule, Wright State's on a 4-game winning streak. They play Cleveland State, UIC, Youngstown State, and Oakland. Those are some pretty winnable games right there. Problem is that Oakland game is kind of a trap game right there. So we'll see what happens, but Wright State's in a good position. They just can't underestimate anyone. And same thing with Green Bay as well. Green Bay just cannot underestimate UIC because UIC wants to get in the hunt for the Horizon League Championship as well. And they who knows? Maybe UIC can play spoilers. So we'll see how it goes. But that's pretty much all I have for the Horizon League. Now let's jump into the ACC, where number 2 Pitt continues to dominate. Pitt is not only having a great week great year in football, but they're having a spectacular year in volleyball. Let's hit the applause button for them. So yeah, Pitt is 12-0 in the ACC, and they're pretty much going to roll through the rest of their games. This week, Pitt is home against Georgia Tech, and they're home against Clemson on Friday and Sunday. Then next week they are at Duke, and then they face Florida State. The Florida State matchup could give them some problems, as well as Louisville, but I just don't see Pitt slowing down for anyone. They're pretty much all gas, no brakes. They're 23-1, and their only loss was to Penn State, where they lost that one in 5. That one honestly could have gone either way, though. And Penn State is still one of the better teams, honestly. As for Pitt, they're number 2 in the top 25 rankings. They definitely deserve it. Some people are mock Pitt, which is definitely not true. Pitt has definitely earned their top number 2 standing. And honestly, I just think that this team can go pretty far this year. They just can't overlook anybody, and they just can't underestimate anybody. They just can't. That would definitely not be ideal for them. It just wouldn't. You can't just have they just don't want to be the Dodgers of the NCAA women's volleyball thing, because as you all know, the Dodgers won 106 games, and then they lost in the divisional round to the Washington Nationals. The Pitt just cannot have that type of seat. They just cannot have that, considering if they do, it would just be a heartbreaking and just gut-wrenching end to the season, considering they had so much promise this year, and with only having one loss in the regular season, barring any upsets, Pitt, it would just be a heartbreaker for Pitt. So Pitt is led by Kayla Lund, who has 279 kills in ACC play. And then not in ACC play in this year overall. And then assist wise, Lexis Akio has 852 assists. Then Stephanie Williams leads Pitt in blocks with 29, with 2 ahead of Kayla Lund. And then in digs, Hallie Hillegas has 343 digs, with Kayla Lund having 218 digs. So there's that. And I looked at the wrong stats. Stephanie Williams leads Pitt in aces with 29, while Kayla Lund has 27 aces. Sabrina Starks leads the team in blocks with 96. So that's quite amazing. Pitt is definitely one of the more surprise and eye-opening teams. I think if this team continues to just be humble and just stay the path and just trust the process, this team could win the NCAA tournament. They just don't want to have that same Minnesota ending where they just get into the Sweet 16 and then they suddenly lay an egg. That would just not be ideal for them. So Pitt's definitely one of the more promising teams this year in the ACC, and I think they're just gonna. And they could probably win the whole thing if they, like I said, just stay the route, stay healthy, and just not overlook anybody. Florida State, on the other hand, has definitely shown up into the party when it comes to ACC play. This week's going to be such a tough week for Florida State. Well, they do have 2 home games this week. Those 2 home games are going to be tough. They play Notre Dame on Friday, and then they play Louisville on Sunday. Those are 2 big home games. I'm going to take Notre Dame to beat Florida State in 5, and then I'll take Florida State to beat Louisville in 4. Florida State is definitely one of the better teams, and earlier in the season, it showed when they took down Minnesota in straight sets. I believe Minnesota was top 10 as well when it came to that. So that was definitely something worth noting. One of their games did get canceled when they played Florida A&M. I believe there was storms brewing during that game. So that was a bummer for Florida State. But I think Florida State, despite having fired Willie Taggart, is definitely going to continue to rise in terms of athletics. And, Florida State's women's volleyball team is one of those teams in sports that definitely fits the bill. And they also have a pretty darn good beach team as well, so be on the lookout for that. But for right now, Florida State, I see them splitting this week. Hopefully for the sake of one of my Twitter followers, who is a huge, passionate Florida State fan, hopefully the Florida State women's volleyball team gets 2 wins and proves me wrong in that Notre Dame game. But I definitely see Notre Dame beating Florida State this week. It's going to be an intense match, though. I think the 5th set is just going to go past 15 points. So we'll see how it goes, though. And then Louisville, I can see Florida State returning on Sunday and just taking it to Louisville. So yeah, and then Georgia Tech is also up there as well. It's surprising to see Georgia Tech just slip through the cracks and then just see themselves tied for second with Florida State and Notre Dame. A lot happens when I don't really talk about the school, which is kind of sad. I really do apologize to all the ACC fans out there, but honestly, it's tough to talk about a lot of these conferences in the span of an hour. So as for Georgia Tech, they are home again, they are at Pitt, and then they are at Virginia. So it's going to be really tough to take down Pitt. As I've said, Pitt is the class of the ACC this year and last year as well. And honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if... but facing this Georgia Tech team, I think Georgia Tech will make it competitive. I think they take a set off of Pitt, but I think Pitt wins that one in 4, maybe 5. It would be quite something to see Pitt getting pushed to the brink, because Pitt is just rolling through for the most part, is pretty much just rolling through their competition. As I'm seeing on their schedule, most of their conference wins have been via sweep, with the lone exception being against Florida State. So I would like to see one team at least challenge Pitt, because it's no fun if one team is just sweeping right through. It's basically like Mercedes just dominating all of motorsports, like Larry and I talk about in the defining moment. So, once again, big shout out to Larry B. You're doing your thing, buddy. I don't know if you're listening, but here's a shout out to you, buddy. So another matchup to keep an eye on is the big blue rivalry game between University of North Carolina and Duke. Despite what the records show, being Duke being 4-8 and 11-14, and North Carolina being 8-4 and 11-11. This is a rivalry game. This is one of the bigger rivalries in all of NCAA sports. It's not just a football rivalry. It's not just a basketball rivalry. It's a rivalry overall. So you gotta acknowledge this rivalry. It's just amazing. So as for Duke North Carolina, I'm gonna take North Carolina to win that one in 4. North Carolina has proven themselves to be an impressive team. And even though they're playing at Duke, I think it's a city rivalry matchup. So, I could see their fans just traveling well to Duke and just showing up and showing the Blue Devils out. So I take North Carolina to win that matchup in 4, and that's going to be a Thursday game. So it's going to be very interesting. And then North Carolina also plays at Wake Forest. I could see, but despite Wake Forest being 1-11 in ACC play, you take away that 1-11 record, Wake Forest is 10-1. So that Wake Forest game could be a trap waiting for North Carolina. So you definitely can't sleep on Wake Forest. Definitely can't sleep on any of those conference teams, especially if you're Pitt. Pitt, you're doing good. You're pretty much on your way to winning the ACC. Then you lose a game, and then the coaching committee frowns upon that, and then you suddenly drop, and then when it comes to NCAA time, you basically just could be in a matchup where you don't want, and then you suddenly lose, and then poof, you're out. So Pitt just can't overlook anybody. As I've said, they just can't overlook anybody. They beat Duke. Georgia Tech will be a tough one. I think Georgia Tech takes a set off of Pitt. I don't care how dominant Pitt is. I think Georgia Tech being improved and being revitalized and being amongst some of the best in the ACC will take a set off of Pitt. But prove me wrong, Pitt. Prove to me why you're one of the favorites to win it all. I think what will happen if Georgia Tech takes a set off of Pitt is that Pitt uses that as motivation to just win out the rest of the way, and then they use that to be humble and say, you know what, we're not invincible. We gotta work on a few things, and we also gotta And we also just gotta learn to just not. We're not this invincible team. It's just like Stanford. Everyone thought Stanford was going to be invincible with Catherine Plummer. Then they lose to BYU, and then suddenly they're not as invincible as many people thought. And then they lose to Texas, and then they also lose to Washington and UCLA, and then suddenly everyone is starting to count Stanford out a little, especially in the ABCA polls. But as for the ACC, I think Pitt's going to win that one outright. It wouldn't be as fun to see. It's not fun to see a one-sided conference being dominated, but Pitt is just up there. They are just up there, man. Shout out to the Pitt Panthers. And to all the haters of the Pitt Panthers, well, if you're hating on them and then your team manages to play Pitt and then your team loses, well then I got nothing more to say except ha ha. And on that note, let us transition into the Ivy League, where I don't really talk about this league all that much just because it's not really the biggest Power 5 conference in all of the NCAA, but there are some decent schools. The Ivy League consists of Princeton, Cornell, Yale, Brown, Columbia, Harvard, Penn, and Dartmouth. Princeton is in first place at 9-1 in the Ivy League. The Ivy League Conference. Then Cornell and Yale are both at 8-2, and then it's pretty much just a downward spiral. It's just a logjam for fourth place going down, with Brown and Columbia being 4-6, Harvard being at 3-7, and then Penn and Dartmouth being at 2-8. So this week's big time matchup will feature Cornell and Yale, where Cornell and Yale, who are both tied for second in the Ivy League standings, will face each other. Now Yale will play at Cornell. That's going to be on ESPN Plus, and it's going to be a tough matchup for Yale. I definitely see Cornell winning that 1-4. I think Cornell is going to come ready to go. They're 15-4 overall, and more importantly, they're just dumb. They just look really good. I just think that Cornell is just going to come much better prepared in that matchup because you look at their overall record. You look at the overall records. Cornell has the best overall record of the Ivy League schools, and I've seen Cornell play a couple times, and they're just downright impressive. Cornell even has a win over Princeton, which is in first place, and Princeton's kind of my pick to win the Ivy League. So overall, Princeton continues its dominance, and one of their more impressive players on that roster is number 4 Jessie Harris, who is a Southern California product, and she came from Corona Del Mar High School. So big ups to Jessie. Another standout player worth noting is Alexa Underwood of Princeton, who is number 1, and she comes from Manhattan Beach, Miracosta. So that's pretty cool as well. Gotta give a big shout out to those two. Big shout to Southern California, and then another, and another player from Southern California is Lindsay Kelly, who is from Harvard, who went to Harvard Westlake, and she's a native of Manhattan Beach as well. So definitely gotta give a shout out to those three traveling from Southern California to chilly Princeton. But as Snoop Dogg or Ice Cube once said, West Coast the best coast. As for Princeton overall, for some of you non-West Coast West Coasters, Princeton overall, they're looking good. They're coming off of a win over Columbia. They have Dartmouth and Harvard. Dartmouth is at the bottom while Harvard is near the bottom. Harvard's overall record is 5-14 and Dartmouth is 2-8, but they're 7-13. So take away that conference record, and Dartmouth is 5-5. But overall, I see pretty much Princeton just taking Dartmouth and Harvard to the shed. Their tough matchup will be against Yale when they play at Yale. So Harvard should cherish playing their last week of volleyball the last week of regular season volleyball in Princeton as much as possible, because they gotta go on the road against Brown. Brown is tied for 4th in the conference, and then Yale is that could be for the Ivy League Conference Championship. So we'll see how it goes for Princeton. I think Princeton is probably the best team in that league, and they could surprise a few teams in the NCAA tournament, but they still have to get to the NCAA tournament first. As for Yale, they play Cornell. Like I said, Cornell's going to win that 1-4. I can see them beating Princeton, but it's going to take a lot of effort. They have to get through this week, and Yale and Columbia are, I believe they're both kind of rivalries. I think it's the baby blue rivalry. I think, because I remember Larry and I talked about Yale having a bit of a rivalry with some of these schools, but they just gotta take it one game at one set, one point at a time, and they just gotta let the rest do itself. So it would be interesting to see Yale make one final push for the Ivy League Conference Championship. They definitely need to win against Cornell this week. It's a Friday game. They just can't underestimate Cornell. Cornell is really good. And if they get past Cornell, then they're still in the hunt for the Ivy League Championship. But they just can't overlook Columbia and Penn. So we'll see what happens, though. I'm definitely going to be interested in how that conference turns out. So yeah. I wish I had more time to get into all those conferences, but then this podcast would be like 3 hours. So who knows, though? Maybe at like the end of the regular season, I'll just recap all the conferences and see where it goes from there. But anyway, before we sign off here, let's talk about the CIF Southern Section Division I Girls Volleyball Championship. Yes, you thought Set Point was all about college volleyball? You are dead wrong. I didn't receive a whole lot of complaints for you all in regards to not wanting me to talk about CIF Southern Section girls volleyball. So I guess I'll be transitioning into the CIF Southern Section girls volleyball Division I championship. That matchup is going to be Redondo Union against Mater Dei, and it's going to be at Cerritos College. That's going to be a really good matchup. I really think that's going to be debatably a matchup worth noting, because early in the season, Redondo Union beat Mater Dei in 5. And keep in mind, for those of you that don't know, Redondo Union did not have one of their star junior, Cami Minor, who was with the U.S. Youth Girls National Team. But still, Redondo won that one in 5 on their home floor. It's, Mater Dei is going to have their work cut out for them. They definitely have to outpass Redondo Union. If they don't outpass them, then Redondo is going to just walk all over them. Also, but that said, however, Mater Dei is coming off of a huge victory over Marymount, being the number 2 seed, and that was a huge win for Mater Dei. But that said, Mater Dei plays really well at home. They have not lost a home game at the Murillo Athletic Center since 2016, when they lost to some San Diego school. I believe it was Santa Fe Christian. That's who it was, where it was home to Lexi's son, who plays at Nebraska now. So yeah, it's been way too long since Mater Dei has lost at the MAC, or the Murillo Athletic Center, as it's short for. So overall, Mater Dei is going to be forced out of their comfort zone when they play at a neutral site. And, they've been in this situation before. This is going to be Mater Dei's 7th straight finals appearance. 7 straight appearances. They've all been under Coach Dan Odell. So we've got to hit the applause button for Mater Dei and Dan Odell. So yeah, it's definitely going to be it's definitely going to be an amazing game on Saturday. Believe it or not, if for those of you that saw my bracket, I picked Mater Dei to win that one, and I'm going to stand by my pick. I picked Mater Dei to beat Redondo Union, and let me tell you why. Mater Dei is not the most invincible team. Sometimes they're going to have a few losses here and there. Mater Dei is not like the most invincible team out there. They're not Assumption from Kentucky, which they beat this year, which is cool. I think Mater Dei is just going to come with a little bit more zing, and every time they play an opponent the second time, they always show them up. They played Marymount, for example, they lost to Marymount twice this year. They beat him in the semifinals. And then last year when they played Marymount, they lost to Marymount once last year. It was in a tournament, and then they beat him when it mattered most in the CIF finals and the CIF state regional finals. So that was big for Mater Dei that year, and I think this just might be like 2015 when Mater Dei won CIF over Redondo Union, because Redondo took Mater Dei to the shed in their first matchup back in 2015. And then when the two met in the CIF finals, Mater Dei just turned it around on them. I think, this is obviously one of Mater Dei's weaker teams, but with a few less seniors. But honestly, this Mater Dei team is just still so good. You look at their players like Mia Tuaniga, Meg Brown, Lauren Tarnoff, Zaria Henderson, Reagan Merck, Jordan Schilling, who's adapted well from playing outside to libero. Then you also have they also run a 6-2 offense with two setters, with Tuaniga and Kaden Skronsky. For those of you that don't know, Mia Tuaniga is the younger sister the younger sister to Josh Tuaniga, who won 3 CIF Southern Section championships at Huntington Beach and won 2 national championships at Long Beach State. So, who knows? Maybe that'll rub off on Mia in her CIF Southern Section championship. But as for Redondo Union, they also have a lot of talent, and it starts with Cami Miner, who is a junior setter. And she is really good. She's really talented. You can't say enough good about her. And this Redondo Union team is not just good with just one player. They have 13 seniors, and they all can compete. They have Noreen Iazia, who's a senior libero. I think she's committed to Texas, which is definitely huge right there. She's going to debatably one of the better schools. And then it's not just seniors that Redondo Union has a lot of talent in. They also have really talented underclassmen, one of which being Malay Koral Blakahovic. I probably butchered that last name, but she's definitely one of the more talented freshmen. They've got some really good freshmen on this team as well. They even have another middle blocker freshman who's made a difference, being Nicole Langton. So this team is definitely not short of talent and not short of underclassmen for that big 13-player senior class. So Redondo is just so good, man. They're at 37-3. Their 3 losses came at the hands of... Their first loss came at the hands of Torrey Pines, where they didn't have Cami Miner, and it was a tough 3-set loss. But Torrey Pines is debatably one of the best teams out there. I think they're the best team. In my mind, they are the best team in San Diego. And as for the other 2 losses in regards to Redondo Union, they had a rough go at Durango where they lost to James Logan, and they also lost to Leon. Those teams are kind of out there, though. I mean, James Logan is a NorCal school, and then Leon, I believe, is in Florida. So it's kind of it was just an unusual tournament for Redondo, but everyone was beating everyone, though. So you can't fault Redondo, and also. Redondo didn't have Noreen Iazia and Cami Minor. Cami Minor just came back from the U.S. national team, and Coach Tommy Chaffins did the correct thing by not playing her and spring her in this tournament. And then Noreen Iazia, I believe, was injured that game, or she just didn't play for like a coach's decision. I don't know if I'm pretty sure she was injured though, but. Ever since losing those 2 games, Redondo has not lost ever since. And, it goes to show you that they're just a really talented team. And those 13 seniors want to go out on top. And Tommy Chaffins has done an excellent job with that program. As for my prediction for that game, I'm still going to stick with my prediction and pick Mater Dei to win it. I think that match goes 5. And it's going to be a crazy, crazy, crazy 5-set match. I think the 5th set is just going to be, it's basically going to be an intense 5-setter, probably going to have the makings of an NCAA Women's Volleyball Championship match, and especially with some of these players going to the next level, going to play on the next level, such as Tuaniga with Long Beach State, Meg Brown with Pepperdine, and Noreen Iazia with Texas. So it's definitely going to be a great matchup for on Saturday when it comes to high school girls volleyball. That could also decide the national championship as well. And it could also have a big placement when it comes to the state playoffs. So we'll see what happens. I think if Redondo wins, Redondo gets the top seed when it comes to the Open Division state playoffs. But if Mater Dei wins, I think Torrey Pines could be the top seed. And then Mater Dei gets the number 2 seed. We'll see what happens, though. But on that note, that is pretty much all for today when it comes to Set Point. As Larry B once said, cue the music! Thank you all so much for joining me for this episode of Set Point. Once again, this is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, and you can catch me every Monday. We will be back here next Monday when it comes to Set Point. You can also catch me on The Defining Moment, and also feel free to catch me on 3 and Out tomorrow when I will be going up against Larry's team, as I, being a Chargers fan, will be going up against his Raiders. So feel free to catch me on 3 and Out tomorrow. But other than that, you can find me at Teran Rodriguez 1. Once again, Teran and then Rodriguez, Rodriguez, and then the number 1. And you can find me on Twitter more times than not. And yeah, I shall see you all next week. Have an amazing day and keep spiking it.